The dust from the Oklahoma Territory stagecoach settled around Ophelia Richardson's worn boots as she stepped onto the wooden boardwalk of Great Bend, Kansas, her heart hammering with equal parts terror and determination. At 30 years old, she had finally escaped her brother's suffocating household in St. Louis, where she had spent the last 12 years caring for his 7 children after his wife's death, becoming more servant than sister, more ghost than woman. The year was 1882, and Ophelia had used every penny of the small inheritance their mother had left her to buy a failing boarding house site unseen, desperate for any life that belonged to herself alone. The building stood at the edge of town, a 2-story structure with peeling paint and crooked shutters that looked like it might collapse in a strong wind. Ophelia clutched her carpetbag tighter, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. She had imagined something humble but salvageable. This looked beyond repair. A man leaned against the porch post, tall and lean with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore dusty work clothes and a black hat pushed back on his head, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. "You Miss Richardson?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that somehow made her stomach flutter in an unfamiliar way. "I am," she managed, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Her hand went unconsciously to smooth her brown hair, pulled back in its usual severe bun. "Cole Yancy. I work the ranch next to your property line. Your brother sent a telegram asking me to check on you." He straightened, and she noticed he was even taller than she had thought, probably 6 feet or more. "This place needs a lot of work. I can see that." Ophelia climbed the creaking steps, determined not to let this stranger see her despair. She had nowhere else to go. Her brother had made it clear she was no longer welcome after she had finally stood up to him, telling him she was a person with her own dreams, not just free labor for his household. Cole followed her inside, and she tried not to notice how his presence seemed to fill the dusty front room. The furniture was broken, wallpaper hung in strips, and she could see daylight through gaps in the walls. But the bones were good, she told herself. The structure was solid enough. "You planning to run this as a boarding house?" Cole asked, picking up a broken chair leg and examining it. "That was the idea." Ophelia set down her bag and turned to face him properly. His eyes were kind despite their intensity, and she found herself unable to look away. "I assume you are here to tell me it is impossible." "I am here to tell you it will be hard," he corrected, "but not impossible. You got money for supplies." "Some." "Very little, actually, but she would make it work somehow." Cole nodded slowly, still watching her with those penetrating eyes. "I could help you fix it up. My ranch does not need much tending this time of year. I could spare a few hours most days." "I could not pay you much," Ophelia said quickly, suspicious of his motives. In her experience, men did not offer help without expecting something in return. "Did not ask for payment." He set down the chair leg. "Consider it being neighborly. Why would you help a complete stranger?" The words came out sharper than she intended, but she was tired and overwhelmed and did not have the energy to be polite. Cole's expression did not change. "Because everybody needs help sometimes, and because your brother's telegram said you were a good woman who deserved a fresh start. That is good enough for me." Ophelia felt her throat tighten. She could not remember the last time someone had described her as deserving anything. "I would appreciate the help then. Thank you." Over the next 2 weeks, Cole appeared every morning just after dawn, bringing tools and lumber and an apparently endless well of patience. He taught Ophelia how to patch walls and fix broken floorboards, how to tell good wood from rot, how to make hinges work smoothly again. She learned he was 34, that he had inherited his small ranch from his uncle 3 years ago, that he preferred coffee strong enough to strip paint and took his eggs scrambled. She also learned that her heart did strange things when he smiled at her, which he did more often as the days passed. Nobody had ever smiled at her like that, as if she was someone worth knowing, worth spending time with. The other girls she had grown up with had all married young, had been courted and kissed and chosen. Ophelia had been plain and quiet, and then her sister-in-law had died, and she had disappeared into her brother's house like a stone sinking into deep water. "You are good at this," Cole said one afternoon as she carefully hammered a nail into a new section of floorboard. They were working in what would become the main sitting room for her future guests. "You are a good teacher." Ophelia sat back on her heels, wiping sweat from her forehead. It was late September, and the Kansas heat still pressed down heavy and thick. "I mean it. You learn fast, and you are not afraid of hard work." Cole set down his own hammer and looked at her directly. "Why did you really come here, Ophelia?" She had asked him to use her first name the previous week, tired of the formality. Now she wondered if that had been a mistake, because the way he said her name made her feel things she did not know how to name. "I told you. I bought this boarding house." "You bought a wreck in a town where you do not know anyone, far from your family. That is running away, not running towards something." Ophelia's hands tightened on the hammer. "Maybe I was running from and towards something at the same time." What were you running from? She should not tell him. It was too personal, too raw. But something about Cole made her want to be honest, made her feel safe in a way she had never experienced before. From being invisible, from being used up and worn down until there was nothing left of me. From the certainty that I would die having never lived a single day for myself. Cole was quiet for a long moment. "And what were you running toward?" "I do not know yet." Ophelia met his eyes. "But I think I might be starting to find out." His expression softened into something that made her breath catch. "Good. You deserve to find out." The boarding house slowly transformed under their combined efforts. Ophelia proved to have an eye for making spaces welcoming despite limited resources. She sewed curtains from cheap fabric, arranged wildflowers in old bottles, scrubbed floors until they shined. Cole built new furniture, replaced rotted boards, fixed the roof and the plumbing. They fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side from dawn until dusk, breaking for meals that they took together on the front porch. Ophelia found herself watching Cole when she thought he was not looking, noticing the way his hands moved with such certainty, the strength in his shoulders, the rare smile that transformed his usually serious face. She had never been attracted to anyone before, had assumed there was something wrong with her, something missing that other women possessed. Now she understood she simply had never met anyone worth feeling this way about. "Tell me about your ranch," she said one evening as they sat on the porch steps, sharing the last of the bread and cheese she had brought from town. "It is small. 200 acres, maybe 30 head of cattle right now. I have been building it up slowly, doing it right rather than fast." Cole stretched his long legs out in front of him. "My uncle was a careful man. He taught me to value quality over quantity." "Do you run it alone?" "I have a hand who helps during busy seasons. Otherwise, it is just me." He glanced at her. "Gets lonely sometimes." "I know about lonely," Ophelia said quietly. "I was surrounded by people for 12 years and lonely every single day. That is the worst kind." Cole's hand moved as if he might reach for hers, then stopped. "Being alone by choice is different from being lonely with people around." "Yes." She wanted him to touch her, she realized with a start. Wanted to know what his hand would feel like holding hers. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. The silence stretched between them, comfortable but charged with something unspoken. Finally, Cole stood brushing crumbs from his pants. "I should head back, early start tomorrow." "Cole," Ophelia stood as well, heart pounding. "Thank you for all of this. I could not have done it without you." "Yes, you could have," he said seriously. "It would have taken longer, but you would have figured it out. You are stronger than you think, Ophelia Richardson." After he left, Ophelia sat back down on the steps, touching her lips with her fingertips. She had never been kissed, had never even come close. At 30, she had resigned herself to never knowing what it felt like to have someone want her that way. But now, with Cole, she found herself wondering, hoping. The boarding house opened for business in mid-October, with 3 rooms ready for guests and a 4th nearly finished. Ophelia's first boarder was a widow named Mrs. Patterson who worked as a seamstress in town. The second was a young railroad clerk named Timothy, who needed a place to stay while he worked on extending the line through Great Bend. The third was a cattle buyer who stayed 2 weeks and paid in advance. Cole still came by most days, ostensibly to help with the remaining repairs, but Ophelia suspected he had other reasons. She caught him watching her sometimes with an expression she could not quite read, something warm and wanting that made her skin tingle. "You should come to the church social next week," Mrs. Patterson said one morning at breakfast. She was a kind woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "The whole town will be there." "I am not sure I would fit in," Ophelia demurred, pouring more coffee. "Nonsense. You are part of this community now. You need to meet people, make friends." Mrs. Patterson's gaze was knowing. "I am sure Mr. Yancy will be there." Ophelia felt her cheeks heat. "I do not know what you mean." "Of course you do not." Mrs. Patterson smiled. "That man has been stuck on you since the day you arrived. Half the unmarried women in this town have tried to catch his eye over the years, and he barely looked at them. Then you show up, and he is here every day like clockwork." "He is just being helpful," Ophelia protested weakly. "If that is what you want to call it." Mrs. Patterson stood, gathering her dishes. "But mark my words, that man is courting you whether you have realized it or not." The idea kept Ophelia distracted all day. Could it be true? Did Cole have feelings for her beyond friendship? She was 30 years old, plain and inexperienced. What could he possibly see in her? But that evening, when Cole arrived with a bouquet of prairie flowers, she began to think Mrs. Patterson might be right. "I saw these and thought of you," he said, almost shyly. "Pretty but tough. Able to grow anywhere." Ophelia took the flowers with trembling hands. "That is the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me. Then people have not been paying attention." Cole stepped closer, and she could smell leather and sage and something uniquely him. "You going to the church social, Mrs. Patterson thinks I should." "I think you should too. I was hoping maybe you would let me escort you." He said it carefully, as if the answer mattered a great deal. "I would like that," Ophelia whispered, barely able to believe this was happening to her. Cole's smile was like sunrise, slow and warm and full of promise. "Then it is settled." The night of the church social, Ophelia wore her best dress, a simple blue cotton she had made herself years ago. It was nothing fancy, but Mrs. Patterson had helped her take it in and add some lace at the collar, and when Ophelia looked in the mirror, she saw someone different than the tired, defeated woman who had arrived in Great Bend 2 months ago. This woman had color in her cheeks and light in her eyes. This woman looked alive. Cole knocked on the door precisely at 6, wearing clean pants and a pressed shirt that made his eyes look even more striking. He stared at her for a long moment, and Ophelia felt suddenly self-conscious. "Do I look all right?" she asked, touching her hair. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her believe him. The social was held in the churchyard, with long tables set up and lanterns hanging from the trees. It seemed like the entire town had turned out, and Ophelia felt overwhelmed by the crowd until Cole took her arm, keeping her anchored to him as he introduced her to what felt like 100 people. Everyone was kind, welcoming her to Great Bend, complimenting her boarding house, which apparently several people had noticed being renovated. The women were curious but not unkind, and Ophelia gradually relaxed, even enjoying herself. "You are popular," she told Cole when they finally had a moment alone, standing near the dessert table. "They are just being friendly." But he looked pleased. "You doing all right? I know crowds can be overwhelming." "I am fine. Better than fine." Ophelia glanced up at him. "Thank you for bringing me. There is nowhere else I would rather be." Cole's hand found the small of her back, a gentle touch that sent warmth radiating through her entire body. "And nobody else I would rather be with." The fiddlers started playing and couples moved to the open area to dance. Ophelia watched them, feeling a pang of longing. She had never danced with a man, never been held and spun and chosen. "Would you like to dance?" Cole asked softly. "I do not know how," she admitted, embarrassment heating her face. "I can teach you if you trust me." Ophelia looked into his eyes and knew the answer with absolute certainty. "I do." Cole led her to the edge of the dancing area, where they would be less conspicuous. He showed her where to put her hands, one on his shoulder and one clasped in his. His other hand rested on her waist, firm and steady. "Just follow my lead," he murmured. "I will not let you fall." The first few steps were awkward, Ophelia too aware of her feet and the people around them. But Cole was patient, guiding her gently, and gradually she relaxed into the rhythm. She stopped thinking about the steps and just felt the music, the warmth of Cole's hand on her waist, the way he held her as if she was something precious. "There you go," he said, smiling down at her. "You are a natural. I have a good partner." Ophelia's heart was racing, but not from exertion. Being this close to Cole, touching him, moving with him, it felt like something had shifted between them, like they had crossed some invisible line. When the song ended, Cole did not immediately let her go. They stood there, faces close, and Ophelia thought wildly that he might kiss her right there in front of everyone. Instead, he stepped back, though his eyes held promises that made her knees weak. "Should we get some air?" he suggested, his voice slightly rough. They walked to the edge of the churchyard, where the prairie stretched out dark and endless under a sky full of stars. Ophelia wrapped her arms around herself, though the night was not particularly cold. "I never did this," she said quietly. "When I was young, I mean. The other girls went to dances and socials, but I was always too shy, too awkward. And then there was no time for any of it." "You are not awkward." Cole turned to face her fully. "You are honest and real, and that is rarer and more valuable than being comfortable at parties. You always say things like that, as if you truly see something worthwhile in me." "I do see it. I have seen it from the first day." Cole reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His fingertips grazed her cheek and she shivered. "I see a woman who is brave enough to start over, strong enough to build something from nothing, and kind enough to still believe in people despite being let down. I see someone extraordinary, Ophelia. I just wish you could see it too." Tears pricked Ophelia's eyes. "I am starting to," she whispered. "You make me feel like maybe I am worth something after all. You are worth everything." Cole's hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped. "I know I am not much, just a rancher with a small spread and no fancy words. But I want you to know that these past 2 months, getting to spend time with you, watching you come alive in that boarding house, it has been the best part of my days, maybe the best part of my whole life." Ophelia's breath caught. "Cole, I do not know how to do this. I have never been courted before. I have never even been kissed. I do not know the rules or what I am supposed to say or do." "There are no rules." His other hand came up, so he was cradling her face between his palms, gentle and sure. You just have to tell me if you feel even a fraction of what I feel for you. Because, Ophelia, I am falling in love with you. I think I started falling that first day, watching you stand up straight and face that wreck of a house with your chin up. And every day since, I have fallen a little bit more. I do, she said urgently, her own hands coming up to grip his wrists, needing to hold on to him. I feel it too. I did not know what it was at first because I never felt it before. But Cole, when I am with you, I feel like I finally understand what all the songs and poems are about. You make me feel seen and valued, and like maybe I am allowed to want things for myself. You are allowed to want anything you want. Cole's voice was low and intense. What do you want right now, Ophelia? She knew what she wanted. She had been thinking about it for weeks, dreaming about it, wondering what it would feel like. I want you to kiss me. I know I am 30 years old, and I have no experience, and I am probably terrible at it. But I have been waiting my whole life without knowing I was waiting, and I do not want to wait anymore. You could never be terrible at anything, Cole murmured. And then he was leaning down, giving her time to change her mind to pull away. But Ophelia tilted her face up, closing her eyes, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. His lips touched hers softly, tentatively, a gentle pressure that sent electricity sparking through her entire body. It was nothing like she had imagined, and everything she had hoped for. Cole kissed her like she was delicate and precious, like he wanted to memorize the feel of her. His thumb stroked her cheek as his lips moved against hers, patient and tender, teaching her without words how to respond. Ophelia's hands slid from his wrists to his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. She kissed him back inexpertly, but with all the emotion she had kept locked inside for 30 years. When Cole finally pulled back, she made a small sound of protest that made him smile. Was it worth the wait? He asked softly, his forehead resting against hers. Yes, Ophelia breathed. Yes, it was worth everything. Cole kissed her again, longer this time, deeper, and Ophelia felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she buried her face in his chest, overwhelmed by the intensity of what she was feeling. I have got you, Cole murmured, his arms coming around her, holding her close. I have got you, Ophelia. They stood there under the stars, wrapped in each other, and Ophelia felt something inside her click into place. This was what she had been running toward. This feeling of being cherished, of being chosen. This man who saw her and wanted her exactly as she was. The following weeks passed in a blur of happiness Ophelia had never imagined possible. Cole courted her properly, calling on her in the evenings after her boarders had been fed, taking her on walks through town and out to see his ranch. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's histories and hopes and fears. And they kissed, sweet stolen moments on her front porch or standing in his barn, each one better than the last. Marry me, Cole said one evening in late November as they sat in her parlor, the fire crackling warmly. Her boarders had all retired for the night and they were alone. Ophelia looked up from mending one of his shirts, which he had brought over with a sheepish request for her help. What? Marry me. Cole took the shirt and needle from her hands, setting them aside so he could take her hands in his. I know we have only known each other a few months, but Ophelia, I am more certain of this than I have been of anything in my life. I love you. I want to spend every day for the rest of my life making you happy, showing you how extraordinary you are. Say yes. Yes, Ophelia said immediately, tears streaming down her face. Yes, Cole, I will marry you. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that took her breath away. I will make you happy, he promised against her lips. I swear I will spend every day trying to make you as happy as you make me. You already do, she whispered back. You already have. They were married a week before Christmas in the same church where they had danced together for the first time. Ophelia wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Patterson had helped her sew, and she carried prairie flowers like the ones Cole had brought her that first time. The whole town turned out, and Ophelia was amazed to realize she had built a community here, had made friends and found a place where she belonged. But nothing mattered as much as Cole, standing at the altar in his best suit, looking at her like she was his entire world. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Cole kissed her thoroughly, not caring that half the town was watching, and Ophelia kissed him back with all the love in her overflowing heart. "I love you, Mrs. Yancey," Cole murmured against her lips. "I love you too," Ophelia replied, and meant it with every fiber of her being. They combined households, with Ophelia continuing to run her boarding house from Cole's ranch, which was large enough to accommodate guests and gave them more space to grow. She kept her 3 regular boarders and gradually added more, building a reputation for cleanliness, good food, and warm hospitality. Cole's ranch prospered too, growing from 30 head of cattle to over 100 in the next 2 years. But the greatest joy came in the spring of 1885, when Ophelia discovered she was expecting their first child. She was 33 by then, and the doctor warned her the pregnancy might be difficult at her age. But Ophelia faced it with the same determination she had brought to everything else in her new life. "I am terrified," she admitted to Cole one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting protectively on her growing belly. "I know. So am I." Cole pressed a kiss to her temple. "But we will face it together, just like we face everything." Their son was born on a stormy October night, squalling and healthy and perfect. They named him Thomas, after Cole's uncle who had left him the ranch. Ophelia held her baby and wept, overwhelmed by the depth of love she felt, by the miracle of this new life she and Cole had created together. "He is perfect," Cole whispered, one finger gently stroking their son's tiny hand, "just like his mother." "He has your eyes," Ophelia said, smiling through her tears. "Poor kid." But Cole was grinning, looking happier than she had ever seen him. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Ophelia managed the boarding house with the help of a young woman she hired from town, while also caring for Thomas and supporting Cole with the ranch. They were busy but happy, their days filled with work and laughter and love. 2 years later they welcomed a daughter, Elizabeth, with Ophelia's brown hair and Cole's easy smile. And 3 years after that, another son they named James, who was quiet and thoughtful like his mother. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Ophelia stood on the porch of their home, watching Cole teach Thomas how to rope a fence post while Elizabeth chased chickens around the yard and James napped inside. The boarding house was thriving, the ranch was prosperous, and their family was healthy and whole. Mrs. Patterson, who still boarded with them despite being in her late 60s now, came to stand beside her. "You have built a good life here." "I have," Ophelia agreed. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is real, that I get to have all of this." "You deserve it. You worked hard for it." Mrs. Patterson patted her hand. "And you chose well. Cole Yancy is one of the good ones." As if summoned by his name, Cole looked up and caught Ophelia's eye. He smiled, that slow, warm smile that still made her heart skip, and started walking toward her. Thomas ran after him, chattering excitedly about his roping progress, while Elizabeth abandoned the chickens to demand her father's attention. Cole scooped Elizabeth up with one arm and ruffled Thomas's hair with his free hand, then climbed the porch steps to stand beside Ophelia. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, shifting Elizabeth to his hip. "Just how lucky I am," Ophelia said honestly. 10 years ago, I never could have imagined this life. I thought I would spend the rest of my days alone and invisible. Then you came along and changed everything." "You changed your own life," Cole corrected gently. "You had the courage to leave, to start over, to take a chance on a broken-down boarding house in a town where you did not know anyone. I just had the good fortune to be there when you did." "You made my first kiss worth the 30-year wait," Ophelia said, standing on her toes to kiss him now, sweet and familiar and still thrilling after a decade of marriage. "You made everything worth it." "Mama, Papa, stop kissing," Elizabeth complained, wrinkling her nose, and they laughed, breaking apart. "You will understand when you are older," Cole told his daughter solemnly, making Ophelia laugh harder. That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Cole and Ophelia sat together on the porch swing he had built for her 5th anniversary. The Kansas prairie stretched out before them, vast and beautiful under a canopy of stars. "Tell me something I do not know about you," Cole said, an old game between them. Ophelia thought for a moment. "I used to be afraid of stars. They were so distant and cold, and they made me feel small and insignificant. And now they make me feel connected to something bigger. They remind me that there is beauty and wonder in the world and that I get to be part of it." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Your turn." "I used to think love was something quiet and comfortable, like a warm coat on a cold day," Cole said thoughtfully. "Then I met you, and I learned that love could be exciting and passionate and still be safe, that it could make you feel more yourself rather than less." Ophelia turned to look at him, this man who had seen her when she was invisible, who had loved her when she thought she was unlovable. "I am so grateful I came to Great Bend. So am I." Cole cupped her face, the gesture as familiar now as breathing, and kissed her the way he had that first time under the stars at the church social. The way he still kissed her, like she was precious and chosen and loved beyond measure. Years continued to pass, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. The boarding house became legendary in Great Bend, known for Ophelia's hospitality and Cole's willingness to help any guest who needed it. Their children grew tall and strong, each inheriting the best qualities of both parents. Thomas proved to have his father's skill with horses and his mother's head for business. At 18, he started his own horse breeding operation on a portion of the ranch Cole deeded to him. Elizabeth inherited Ophelia's quiet strength and Cole's kind heart, becoming a teacher in the Great Bend schoolhouse. And James, the thoughtful one, surprised everyone by becoming a veterinarian, studying in Kansas City before returning home to care for the animals of their community. "We did good," Cole said one evening when he and Ophelia were in their 50s, watching their grown children gathered around the dinner table with their own families. Thomas had married a rancher's daughter and had 2 children of his own. Elizabeth had wed the deputy sheriff, and they were expecting their first baby. James was courting a doctor's daughter from a neighboring town. "We did," Ophelia agreed, lacing her fingers through Cole's under the table. "Better than I ever dreamed possible." That night, lying in bed in the room they had shared for over 2 decades, Cole pulled Ophelia close. She fit against him perfectly the way she always had. "You ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Starting so late, I mean, missing out on being young and carefree together." Ophelia considered the question seriously. "No. I think we both needed to become who we were before we could be right for each other. You needed time to build your ranch and understand what you wanted in life. I needed to learn my own strength, to discover I could stand on my own. If we had met when we were younger, we might have passed each other by without recognizing what we could be together." "That is a frightening thought," Cole admitted, "but we did not pass each other by. We found each other at exactly the right time." Ophelia traced the familiar lines of his face, marked now with years of sun and hard work and laughter. He was 58, his dark hair threaded with silver, but to her he was as handsome as the day they met. "My first kiss was worth the 30-year wait because it was with you, Cole. And every day since has been worth the wait too. I love you, Ophelia Yancy," Cole said, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. "I will love you until the day I die and beyond if I can figure out how to manage it." "I love you too," she whispered back. "Always." They celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with a party that filled their home and spilled out into the yard. Half of Great Bend came to honor the couple who had built such a remarkable life together. Ophelia, now 55, looked around at the faces of friends and family, at the community she had become an integral part of, at the man who still looked at her like she hung the moon. "Give us a speech," someone called out, and the crowd took up the cry. Cole squeezed Ophelia's hand. "You should say something." She hesitated, then nodded. Speaking in front of people still made her nervous, but she had learned over the years that some things were worth pushing through fear for. "25 years ago," Ophelia began, her voice gaining strength as she went on, "I came to Great Bend with almost nothing. I was running away from a life that had made me invisible, and I was terrified that I had made a terrible mistake. This boarding house was falling apart. I knew no one, and I was convinced I would fail." She looked at Cole, her anchor, her home. "Then this cowboy showed up on my porch and offered to help for no reason except basic human kindness. He taught me how to fix walls and floors and broken furniture. But more than that, he taught me how to believe in myself again. He taught me that I was worth loving, worth choosing, worth building a life with." Her voice wavered, but she pushed on. "At 30 years old, I had never been kissed. I thought I had missed my chance at love, at happiness, at having a life that was truly mine. But that first kiss, when it finally came, was worth every single year I waited. Because it was with the right person at the right time in the right place. Cole Yancy, you made me believe in miracles. You made me believe in myself. You gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams, and I would wait 1,000 years for you if I had to. I love you with everything I am." There was not a dry eye in the crowd. Cole stood and pulled Ophelia into his arms, kissing her thoroughly while everyone cheered and clapped. "I love you too," he murmured against her lips. "Every day I wake up grateful that you took a chance on a broken-down boarding house in Great Bend. Because if you had not, I never would have found the other half of my heart." As the party continued around them, Cole and Ophelia slipped away to their favorite spot on the porch, the swing where they had spent countless evenings talking and dreaming and simply being together. "Do you remember the night I proposed?" Cole asked, pulling her close. "Every detail," Ophelia confirmed. "You took my mending away and said you were more certain of wanting to marry me than you had been of anything in your life. I was right." Cole kissed the top of her head. "Best decision I ever made." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one. The sounds of the party drifted to them, laughter and music and the hum of happy conversation. This was their legacy, Ophelia thought. Not just the children and grandchildren, not just the successful ranch and boarding house, but this community they had helped build, these connections they had fostered, this love they had shared with everyone around them. "I have been thinking," Cole said after a while. "That sounds dangerous," Ophelia teased. He chuckled. "I want to write down our story, not for publication or anything like that, just for our family, so our grandchildren and great-grandchildren know how we found each other. So they understand that it is never too late to start over, to find love, to build the life you want. I think that is a wonderful idea." Ophelia turned in his arms so she could see his face. "Though you should know that our story is not over yet. We still have chapters left to write." Many of them, I hope. Cole's hand came up to cup her cheek, the gesture as tender now as it had been the first time all those years ago. With you, I want all the time I can get. You have me, Ophelia promised, for all the time there is. They kissed as the stars wheeled overhead and the party continued, and their family celebrated the love that had started with a broken-down boarding house and a cowboy who offered help to a stranger. It was a kiss that held 25 years of history and the promise of many more to come. A kiss that proved, beyond any doubt, that some things were absolutely worth the wait. In the years that followed, Cole and Ophelia did write their story, sitting together at the kitchen table on quiet evenings, remembering and recording all the moments that had made up their life together. They filled 3 leather-bound journals with memories and lessons and love letters to the future generations of Yanceys. Thomas's children read those journals and pass them to their own children. Elizabeth's grandchildren treasured them. James's descendants kept them safe. And the story of Ophelia Richardson, who came to Great Bend at 30 years old, having never been kissed. And Cole Yancy, the cowboy who made her first kiss worth the long wait, became a family legend passed down through generations. But more than the story, they passed down the lesson that love comes in its own time, that courage means starting over when you need to, that kindness to strangers can change everything, and that it is never, ever too late to find your happily ever after. Ophelia lived to be 82, and Cole made it to 86. They died within 6 months of each other, the way people who have truly become one sometimes do. They left behind 3 children, 14 grandchildren, 32 great-grandchildren, and a legacy of love that spread far beyond Great Bend, Kansas. But their true legacy was simpler than that. They proved that 2 people could find each other in the vastness of the world, could choose each other despite everything, and could build something beautiful that would last long after they were gone. They proved that the right person makes everything worth waiting for, and that a single moment of courage, a single decision to start over, can change the entire course of a life. And sometimes, late at night when the wind blows across the Kansas prairie, you can almost see 2 figures sitting on an old porch swing, wrapped in each other's arms, writing their story across the stars.